Hi, my name is Shay Kirkhoff, and I'm a PhD candidate at NC State University. I'm here to talk to you today about the digital divide, or as I refer to it, the digital divides, because there's more than one type of divide, and these divides happen between more than a few types of people. While I'm talking to you today, I will be going through a Prezi, and I will give you the link to this Prezi so that you can dive deeper into the resources that are presented here. I won't go into depth and the resources that you can look at yourself. So first, we'll define what the digital divide is. I just want to show you the global landscape, but we'll take a close look at the US and then look really closely at how this affects school literacies for children. And finally, we will, as a class, talk about some policy implications. So I want to begin by showing you the beginning of a TED Talk, and then I will provide the link at the end so that you can watch it in its entirety.
The digital divide is a mother that's 45 years old and can't get a job because she doesn't know how to use a computer. It is an immigrant that doesn't know that he can call his family for free. It is a child that can't resolve his homework because he doesn't have access to information. Digital divide is a new illiteracy. Digital divide is also defined as a gap between individuals and communities that have access to information technologies and those that don't. Why does this happen? It happens because of three things. The first is that people can't get access to these technologies because they can't afford them. The second is because they don't know how to use them. And the third is because they don't know the benefits derived from technology. So let's consider some very basic statistics. The population of the world is nearly 7 billion people. Out of these, approximately 2 billion are digitally included. This is approximately 30% of the entire world population, which means that the remaining 70% of the world, close to 5 billion people, do not have access to a computer or the internet. Let's think about that number for a second. 5 billion people. That's 4 times the population of India that have never touched a computer, have never accessed internet. So this is a digital abyss that we're talking about. This is not a digital divide. Here we can see a map by Chris Harrison that shows the internet connections around the world. What we can see is that most of the internet connections are centered on North America and Europe, while the rest of the world is engulfed in the dark shadow of digital divide. Next, we can see connections city to city around the world, and we can see that most of the information generated is being generated between North America and Europe, while the rest of the world is not broadcasting their ideas or information. And so, what does this mean? We are living in a world that seems to be having a digital revolution. A revolution that everyone here thinks that we're part of, but the 70% of the world that is digitally excluded is not part of this. What does this mean? Well, the people that will be digitally excluded won't be able to compete in the labor markets of the future. They won't be connected. They'll be less informed. They'll be less inspired. And they'll be less responsible. Internet should not be a luxury. It should be a right because it is a basic social necessity of the 21st century.
Okay, so I like his point about the internet today is a social necessity. And the definition that he gives of a digital divide, the gap between the people and the places that have access to modern information and communications technology, also referred to as ICT, and those that don't or that have restricted access. And this includes, ICTs include telephone, television, personal computers, the internet, etc. So there are different barriers to access and usage. So that really comprises the big two divides, access being one and usage being the second. So access, the availability and reliability of the infrastructure to access the internet, so actually being able to get online, And one of the reasons that this is a problem is because of cost. So the affordability of accessing the internet on a regular basis. Now, we also have a digital divide between users and their capabilities. So when we are using the internet, sometimes we are consuming information, sometimes we're curating it, and sometimes we're creating it ourselves. And so there's also a divide between these capabilities. The digital capability of the society at the individual and the collective level, users' ability to utilize digital tools. And then the content that is on the websites. So how relevant is it to that person or that society? What language is it in? And also the user's knowledge of the digital content and the affordances of ICT tools to meet their needs. So as the speaker said, the person who doesn't know that they could use Skype, get a free account, and make a free call to their relatives from their home country. That is also a divide of the affordances of ICT tools. So we have drivers of ICTs and digital literacies. We have the infrastructure, the affordability, and the skills. And so if you have the money, if your country has the infrastructure, and if you possess the digital literacy skills, then you're ready. And then we have different levels of usage, the individual, government, business, and these are drivers. And then they impact both the economy and social life in all of our lives in the 21st century. So the impact of having the ICT infrastructures and having the digital literacy skills impact people both economically and socially, and impact communities at large both economically and socially. All right, so now let's really dig deep into the United States. Okay, so trends over time. General internet access has gone up in the United States, up to 87% in 2014. And most of this you can see is broadband. And then smartphone usage has increased to 58% in the US. And you can view more at the Pew Internet Project online. They have a lot of resources. So this is also from the Pew Research Center, and this is about teens and technology. 87% of teens have access to a computer or laptop. 81% have access to a gaming console. 73% have a smartphone. 58% have a tablet, and 30% a basic cell phone. So a cell phone, but that doesn't have necessarily the internet capabilities. However, these access statistics are divided demographically. So there's a divide in access with race, age, income, parents' education, and urbanity. We see gender isn't really an access issue. 87% of boys, 88% of girls, so pretty much the same. And right here, I'm looking specifically at tablets and desktop and laptops, because those are the tools that students really need for the academic tasks that are going on in schools today. So when we go down to race and ethnicity, we see that white teens have about a 10% more access to laptops or desktops, and it's a little more even with the tablet access. By ages, as students get older, they have better access to desktops or laptops. younger students may be more likely to have a tablet. And then by household income, we see both tablets and desktop or laptop access increase, and parents' education level. And then there's a really interesting spread here with urbanity, because while rural areas, there's a divide between the access of the infrastructure, the speed of the internet. Rural areas have less access to high broadband. But according to this Pew poll, there is less access of desktops or laptops in urban areas. So again, we see some divides between access. Now, this report also talks about teens' internet use. 92% of teens use the internet daily. 73% of teens own a smartphone, and it's in this smartphone range that we start to see the racial divide become less. And then 24% of teens go online almost constantly. So I don't know if that number surprises you because it's smaller or bigger than you thought, but that's what they found. Okay, so that's not without its warnings. So while access to internet in the US is becoming better, teens are accessing the internet for gaming and social media. These skills do not automatically translate to online research and comprehension skills. And it's these online research and comprehension skills that Dr. Don Liu speaks about in the Reading Teacher article. And it's these online research and comprehension skills that are needed for academic life for our students now, and also for work life later. So the Pew research found that students are mostly using Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat, but those aren't necessarily the skills that are needed for academic and work life. So I want to talk about the implications of this divide. So not just the access, but the usage divide, where first of all, our students aren't performing well on these, and then besides that, they're not performing well in general, there's a divide by economic status of students' usage capabilities. So I want to give you a chance to hear Dr. Don Liu speak about this.
Hi, I'm Don Liu. I am a professor of education at the NEAG School at the University of Connecticut, and I hold the endowed chair in literacy and technology here and direct the New Literacies Research Lab. And we work in a number of collaborative projects with the New Literacies Collaborative down there at North Carolina State. Let's see, I'm going to spend a few minutes just to talk a little bit about what we call online research and comprehension these days. It used to be called online comprehension, but it's a little more precise to call it online research and comprehension. What is it? Well, it's pretty much how we read on the internet. Much of our reading on the internet is inquiry reading. That is, we use the internet to learn new things and acquire new knowledge. And so it's really reading to learn online is what online research and comprehension is all about. And the work that we've done shows that there are at least 5 different elements to it that are useful from an instructional point of view and also from a diagnostic point of view as you watch kids in classrooms conducting inquiry reading. What are they? Well, the first one is identify a good question. And sometimes you have to read a little bit to get the right question, and so that sort of strategy is an important one. It is using information you find to reshape the initial question you have. There's also locating skills that include both traditional search engine use, but also reading and drilling down through a web page to locate the precise information that you need. So keyword entry and reading search engine results and making inferences from links on a web page, those are all skills that are important in that area. Also critical evaluation, especially the evaluation of sources for reliability. How do you evaluate a web page for its reliability? And we find that it's important for kids to understand how to locate the author, evaluate the author's expertise, and determine the author's point of view, and then use those three elements to evaluate reliability. Synthesis is a fourth area, and most kids only read a single web page, they draw a conclusion, and they say that's it. But really, the better readers, online readers, are ones that go to multiple web pages, trying to locate consistent information. And so synthesis of information between multiple web pages is another important area. And then finally, communicating skills, whether by email or texting or video conferencing or even Facebook, if you're looking for information. We use communicate skills to acquire information about doing inquiry reading, asking people what they know about things, and also sharing information. So those are the 5 areas that we find that are important. Recently, we've done a study on this area between economically advantaged school districts and economically challenged school districts. And what we found actually was quite interesting. Statistically, you can control for pre-test differences in state reading scores. State reading scores only measure offline reading, so we controlled for pre-test differences between the 2 different districts in offline reading. We also controlled for prior knowledge differences, because that often is different between different populations. And finally, we controlled for state writing scores, because we include communicate in our definition of online research and comprehension, and we wanted to remove any differences there. So what we found was that there's a separate independent achievement gap based on income inequality in this study. It's above and beyond the achievement gap with traditional offline reading. So there's a separate element to online research and comprehension, or online reading, that is an achievement gap that we don't include in Common Core, for example. You don't see the words internet or online in the Common Core state anchor standards anywhere. And we don't include them in the current state standards in states. You don't find online or internet very often at all. And so we believe that suggests that it's critically important, especially in terms of income inequality and in terms of equal opportunity, that we begin to aggressively support students' acquisition of these online reading skills to acquire new information and to learn new things. Now the question then becomes, what can we do in our classrooms? First is to have students work in pairs when you have them do online research and comprehension, when you ask them to look up information and try and solve a problem. We find that the research shows that students who collaborate together do much better at this than when they're reading individually. So it's critically important to collaborate. Another element is to what we call helping the last become the first. When you bring in a new technology, it might be if you're introducing a school email system, or if you're introducing a new tool in the class, maybe a video tool or anything else in the classroom that has a new technology that requires new literacies. We think it's really important that you teach your weakest student in the classroom, the most marginalized students in the classroom, that skill first and make them the experts with those new literacies. And then they can teach other students the literacies of that particular tool. So at the 2nd grade level, if you bring in a new drawing program and teach your weakest readers and writers, or your most marginalized students, how that tool works, and then set up an activity perhaps in your computer center in the classroom where all of the students have to go through and complete an activity, and then have those students work as the experts, helping everyone else with these new literacies. opportunity to really help the last become first by teaching them the new skills that are required for any new tool before other students, and give them the literacies before other students get them, making them the experts is quite an effective strategy.
Okay, so we just heard Dr. Liu speak to us about his study that you read about. So just to give you a little more information about all of the work Dr. Liu and his colleagues have done, this is building on over 15 years of research on new literacies. And this most recent study, the team designed an assessment to capture these online reading skills. And because it's not just the reading itself, so if you put, let's say, a Word document on a screen and ask a kid to read it and then give multiple choice questions at the end, that is just putting an offline reading task on a screen. So that's not what he's talking about here. He's talking about the more organic online reading experiences where there's hypertext, where first of all you have to find the sources to read and then navigate your own path through the reading and create something yourself through synthesis at the end. So those are that's what Dr. Liu is talking about when he says that there is a separate divide between higher income and lower income students, this online reading gap. It's using those online research and communication skills and comprehension skills. He mentioned 5 in the video and he mentioned 4 in the article. So the assessment that the team created tested on 4, on locating sources, evaluating the sources, synthesizing information across sources, and then communicating that in an online fashion. And the study found that only 50% of students overall could complete these at the proficient level. And then there was a gap in income on each of the 4 areas. So there was a gap by income on locating sources, a gap on evaluating, a gap on synthesizing, and a gap on communicating. And the gap was determined by 2 samples, so a sample of students in a high-income district and a sample of students in a low-income district. So these were not individual to individual compared, but district to district. And Dr. Liu does really good work, and the implications of that research were that we need to make sure that even though these students are called digital natives, that they aren't digitally native to academic work online. So when they were growing up, yes, they always had technology around, but they, number 1, might not have had access to it in their own homes. Number 2, they haven't necessarily used the internet and communication technologies for academic purposes. So in order to synthesize nonfiction, in order to read informational text and draw conclusions and then communicate these conclusions in written form. Okay, so these are different new literacies that students need instruction on. And then another implication for Dr. Liu's work is that these new literacies, locating, evaluating, synthesizing, and communicating online, are not part of the Common Core standards, and they're not part of state tests. So while there might be like a broad category that says literacies, and it may say synthesize. There's nothing in the standards themselves that say online or digital texts. And so when the assessments are made, the assessments aren't made based on introductions or notes in the margin. The assessments are made based on the way the standards are worded. And so students are being assessed on reading and writing, but not online reading and writing. And this leads to another gap. So other studies have found that students in marginalized or under-resourced areas are often instructed with a more test prep type curriculum. So if it's not on the test, it's excluded from the classroom time. So if online and digital literacies, if online reading and comprehension and research skills are not on the assessments, then they are more likely not to be in those marginalized and under-resourced schools' classrooms. So that is a problem because we see from that Pew study that there's also a divide in home access and home usage. So if students have this divide at home and then there's a divide at school, then that means the divide will only be getting bigger. So this is an issue that needs to be addressed, and there are, different solutions and different ways to go about. And I want to give you a few more statistics, go back to the Prezi, show you a few more statistics, and then open up the discussion to you so that you can start thinking about what some solutions could be for the digital divide issue. So a few implications we've talked about already for the classroom, but then let's talk about society at large. So if there's a difference in the access and usage by economic status, then that means that later in society there could be a divide in the economic and workforce development, in civic participation, in further education, in healthcare, and in public safety. So here's another infographic that's on the Prezi. I just wanted to show you so that you can look at the statistics a little more as part of your solution. So in order for total digital inclusion, we need to reduce the gap at all levels. At the level of access to computers, access to broadband internet. We need to reduce the gap of usage, so education on digital literacy, education on the affordances of ICT tools, and to decrease the gap at all of these levels requires multifaceted solutions. So, can you offer some specific solutions? Maybe public access of computers, but how, when, where, paid for by whom? Free Wi-Fi, again, how? How will you keep it safe? When, where, paid for by whom? Digital literacy instruction, how, when, where, by whom? Does this start in elementary school? Is it the computer teacher's job or the reading teacher's job? Who's responsible for digital literacy? And any other solutions that you might think of. So here again are the links, so you can watch the TED Talk in its entirety, and there are links to the infographics, the Pew reports, and the Don Liu video if you would like to listen and watch it again. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. It is snkerkho@ncsu.edu. You should be able to find me. And I hope that you have a great discussion.